About 2 years ago, I moved to a house with a garden. I had been living in apartments for years, so having access to a garden was actually something very new to me. And I thought, let's give it a try. How difficult can it be? I thought of a nice-looking lawn, some beautiful flowers, maybe some vegetables, nothing fancy. And I remember I was very happy and motivated. Of course, first I had to do some research and some reading, which basically meant going online, typing words like gardening, tips and tricks, what tools to buy. But then I thought I was ready. And while I was working outside, I realized that I wasn't doing this solely for myself. I also wanted others to see and to appreciate my accomplishments. I mean, don't we all? But despite my best efforts, things didn't work out. See for yourself. Terrible. Just terrible. The grass didn't grow the way I wanted. The soil didn't behave the way I wanted. There were too many weeds. The flowers looked miserable. I even tried pesticides, but that made things actually worse than better. It was a mess, but I was convinced that I had followed the instructions. I even looked at my neighbors' gardens, and they seemed fine. So why was my garden doing this to me? I was frustrated, and so I gave up. And that was the end of my gardening. But for some reason, the memory of it actually came back to me last year when I saw some exciting new trends happening in the world of Twitter. And in retrospect, I am actually glad that my attempt at gardening failed so miserably, because this experience has given me some valuable insights and a wonderful lens to talk about these trends. As an internet researcher, I'm interested in the ways social media like Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube are used for purposes of branding, but also for protest. And while this line of research is still relatively new, we have already seen some very important developments happening in recent years. Social media have been telling their stories. And the latest chapter involved the massive waves of protest that captivated the world around the turn of the decade, such as Occupy Wall Street or the Arab Spring. Events like these have further enhanced the roles that social media can play in society by offering new use contexts that go beyond merely using these tools to connect, to collaborate, and to coordinate efforts on the ground. Twitter, for instance, provided a viable alternative to those who couldn't participate in person and who still wanted to contribute in some fashion. Through social media, these local events gained a global additional dimension. And many now believe that any contribution, that every voice matters, be it physical or be it virtual. As a result, the potential sites where people can participate in society, in politics, and in business have become a lot more diverse, so that nowadays we measure public opinion not only by what happens in the real world, but more often by what happens online. For researchers, this has opened up very exciting questions about self-expression, about community formation, and about personal engagement, as we're seeing the lines between the real world and the online world further disappear. If you need further proof, let me just tell you that right now, I'm seeing a couple of faces slightly illuminated from below, so I'm guessing some of you are using their cell phones or the laptops to record your impressions, to share your impressions with your networks online, on Facebook, on Twitter, and so forth. But these questions do not only concern researchers. Many professional new media users, like companies, organizations, institutions, and political offices, who know the significance of social media nowadays are in the position to adapt. But this has turned out to be easier said than done. Take, for example, the case of the failed reputation campaign of McDonald's on Twitter in 2012. The fast food chain had asked Twitter users to respond to a specific hashtag and to share personal dining experiences. If we just look at the total number of respondents, we could say that the campaign was actually quite the success. But if we look at content, let's look at it together. I used to like McDonald's. I stopped eating McDonald's years ago because every time I ate it, I felt like I was dying inside. How about another one? I remember spitting out a chicken nugget after finding a chicken nail inside the mechanically separated chicken. Not really the kinds of dining experiences that McDonald's had anticipated. In only a matter of hours, all of the major newspapers in the United States had picked up on the story, and as a result, the reputation of the fast food chain took a very significant hit. Another major example happened last year when the New York Police Department asked Twitter users to respond to a specific hashtag, MyNYPD, and to upload personal photos with officers. Again, many responded. But users took a little bit more freedom in the kinds of photos they uploaded. See for yourself. I mean, it does include an officer, doesn't it? Within a single day, roughly 50,000 messages were tweeted and retweeted, and hundreds of photos were posted. More than 100,000 messages after the second day. Granted, some of these photos were positive in nature, but most of them were similar to the one that you're seeing here. Other users also used the opportunity to further fuel anti-police sentiments by linking news articles that discussed offenses committed by individual officers, such as this one. New York police officer charged with using dead man's credit card. Again, not the kinds of responses that the hashtag creator expected. All of this painted a very disturbing image regarding police practice. Sure, we can say that timing was an issue. After all, the issue of police brutality in the United States was prominent at the time, and it still is. But the bigger issue was that neither the New York Police Department nor McDonald's had taken into account that these kinds of online reactions can actually happen. When the damage was already done, neither of them tried to engage with the Twitter user base, even though this would have been possible through the use of the hashtag. And depending on the kind of response, maybe further embarrassment could have been prevented. Who knows? Social media users reward authenticity and engagement. And there have been cases where an honest response was able to turn a whole campaign around. But instead, both tried to mitigate the damage by trying to cancel the campaigns. But this didn't work either. Hashtags remain on Twitter for as long as people post to them, so each conversation kept trending for weeks. In this slide, the future of reputation campaigns on social media looks rather gloomy. Technology strategists Hassan Massoum and Mark Tovey now wonder if we're actually living in a reputation society rather than an information society. Based on these examples, this seems very true. And these are just two examples. But I think I understand how debilitated the social media teams of the NYPD and McDonald's must have felt when they saw what was happening to the hashtags they had created. The same feelings of frustration and feebleness that I experienced myself when I saw the outcome of my gardening attempt. My garden was telling me something. Not only how it wanted to be treated, the kinds of nourishments it required. It was telling me that I was responsible for this outcome. At the time, I neither understood the signals or I didn't respond to them, being too naive to think that I could control everything when I should have conceded from the very beginning that some things would just stay out of my control. In simple terms, 3 interacting components determine growth in a garden: physical properties, chemical elements, and the presence and activities of life forms in the soil. Yes, you can dig the earth over to improve water movement. You can add fertilizers to the soil to enhance growth, but the activities of life forms in the soil play a crucial role. And this is what those who use social media professionally have to understand and come to terms with. After events such as Occupy Wall Street or the Arab Spring, this mentality of contesting, of confronting, is not going to go away. It is going to seep into other communication contexts. So I suggest we think of our gardens when we think of dealing with social media, because only then can we hope that the seeds we plant, such as a hashtag, for example, can grow. Not like that, but maybe more like this. But if professional social media users continue to remain oblivious to these new forms of online reactions, or even worse, resort to the chemical hammer, then it's not going to be the gardeners who will determine growth in a garden, but the various life forms in the soil who will deal with the outcome. But if we listen to what our gardens tell us, then I believe working in the social media garden can become more manageable, especially when we plant the seeds. Thank you.